Hi, this quick video is going to give you a few steps that you can run in order to verify that the software prerequisites for the ARC tutorials are up and running. This is going to cover everything inside the docs folder. Before watching this video, you should go through and complete all those instructions. First, if you're on Windows, you want to double check that WSL2 is installed properly. You can open up Windows PowerShell and then type in WSL-L-V. You should see something like this. If you see anything different or an error, it likely means that you have WSL1 installed or you don't have it installed at all. So you'll want to go back and fix that. Next, all operating systems are going to want to verify that Docker is installed and running. So you can do that just by typing in docker-v. And if you see any sort of version, then you're perfectly fine. It doesn't need to be the exact one that I have here. This is just simply verifying that it's installed. Next, we want to check that the development image is built. So you can use the command docker image ls, and you can run that, or for me, I'm going to pipe that into grep. So then you put in a pipe, grep arc dev, and that's just to filter the output to make it a little bit easier to look at. So now it's just showing me one line instead of several. So as long as you see something there with ARC dev in it, then you're good to go. Next, we're going to run the image and make sure that everything's working in there. So you want to navigate into the Docker folder of the repository that you cloned off GitHub. For me, it's in a slightly different spot than where it would be for you if you followed the tutorial series exactly. So navigate into wherever that is using cd and then run the following command. /run docker. Sorry, /docker run. Okay, once you see the shell change a little bit, for me it's black and white now instead of color, and it says @arcdev instead of @desktop some number, that means that you're now inside the Docker container as opposed to inside the WSL or bash instance. So now everything you do in here is going to be somewhat temporary, because as soon as you close the container, the current state of it gets lost unless if you use a special command to save it. And then also, regardless of where you put the code that you downloaded off the repository, it's going to show up in your home under Catkin Workspace. However, this is mounted with what's called a bind mount, meaning that it's the same location on disk on both your regular computer and inside the Docker container. So any changes to these files will be permanent, so be careful with that. So what we want to do next is cd into those files, cd into the Catkin workspace. If you haven't built the workspace before, you need to do that now. So you can just type in catkin build, and then this will take just a minute. If you've already run this before, it should run very quickly, and there's no harm in doing it twice. Okay, so that just finished, and now I'm going to source the setup files. Source devel/setup.bash. Okay, and now before I go ahead and run the snake tutorial, I'm going to double check that I have X forwarding working properly. This means that the Docker container can open up a graphical display on my Windows desktop. You'll want to check this on both Ubuntu, Mac, and Windows, although the method in order to fix it if it isn't working is going to be different for all of those. So inside the Docker container, we installed something called Xeyes. So you can run that, and then you should see these little eyeballs following your mouse pointer. If you see that, you're good to go, and you can close out. Next, I'm going to run the raw software and just double check that the snake is working. So ROS launch snake tutorial. Oops. Snake tutorial snake.launch. So the command again is ROS launch snake_tutorial snake.launch. That's going to open up a Pygame window, and that's going to be running the final output of the tutorial because that code already exists inside the repository. So if the snake moves and chases the little apple, that means you're good to go and everything's going to work on your computer whenever you follow the tutorial in order to build it. We can close out of that. One last thing that you can test, especially if you're on Windows, you can verify that you can edit these files inside the Docker container using a modern text editor. So if you want to edit things inside the terminal, you can use Nano or Vim or Emacs, but I prefer using VS Code. I think it's a nicer experience. So you can verify that by going down here into the bottom and then Remote WSL New Window. I can close out of that other one. I'm going to hit Explorer on the top left there and then Open Folder. And now this is going to put me inside my WSL2 instance. And then, so I put this inside Source, Snake Tutorial Workspace, Source, ARC Tutorials, and there we are. So now I can see all these files on the left. For example, I can go into SnakeSim, launch, snakesim.launch, and you should see these files. And this is going to be important just so that you can have a nice interface in order to be editing these files as you work on the tutorial. If you're using something like Ubuntu or Mac, you don't need to do anything fancy with connecting through the Docker container. You can just edit them locally on your hard drive. But on Windows, it's sometimes a little bit trickier because of WSL. So if everything here worked, then you're good to go and you can get started working on those tutorials.